Are the Igbo people of Nigeria really Jewish? A question that has stirred curiosity, sparked debates, and inspired devotion for generations. To some, it is a story of ancient heritage, a link to the sacred lineage of the lost tribes of Israel, a connection that places the Igbo people within the grand narrative of the Abrahamic faiths. To others, it is a myth born of colonial encounters and missionary influence, a tale crafted by foreign observers who saw similarities between Igbo customs and biblical practices and declared them a lost branch of ancient Israel. But beneath the myths, the theories, and the heated arguments lies a profound question about identity, history, and the power of ancestral memory. The theory that the Igbo people are descendants of ancient Jews is not a recent invention. It traces back to the early days of European exploration and Christian missionary work in West Africa, when colonial observers noticed what they believed were Jewish customs among the Igbo. Circumcision performed on the 8th day, reverence for a single supreme God, ritual sacrifices, and purification rites. For these missionaries, who viewed Africa through the lens of their biblical upbringing, the resemblance seemed too close to be coincidence. They wrote letters and books claiming that the Igbo were a lost tribe of Israel, one of the ancient 10 tribes dispersed during the Assyrian conquest of the northern kingdom of Israel. But the idea of a Jewish origin for the Igbo was not only a story told by outsiders. Over time, some Igbo communities themselves began to embrace the narrative. They saw in it a connection to a broader spiritual family, a sense of divine chosenness that elevated their place in the world. In the 20th century, this belief grew stronger as global conversations about identity, race, and religion intensified. Synagogues were established in Nigeria, Hebrew names were adopted, and prayers in the style of ancient Israel were recited. Today, a small but devoted community of Igbo Jews continues to practice a form of Judaism, maintaining their faith in this ancient connection. But is this story true? Are the Igbo really connected to the ancient Israelites? Or is this theory a product of cultural cross-pollination, a narrative born of misunderstood rituals and eager imaginations? The answer is complex. To truly understand the origins of the Igbo people, we must look beyond the myths and examine the full spectrum of their heritage. We must explore their indigenous beliefs, their oral histories, their ancient kingdoms, and their connections to other African civilizations. This video takes you on a journey through time, tracing the roots of the Igbo people, from the sacred lands of southeastern Nigeria to the ancient world beyond. The truth is richer, deeper, and more extraordinary than any single theory can explain. To understand the debate about whether the Igbo people are connected to ancient Jews, one must first understand the Igbo people themselves, their land, their language, their beliefs, and their way of life. The Igbo homeland is nestled in southeastern Nigeria, a region defined by its lush rainforests, winding rivers, fertile farmlands, and ancient towns that pulse with history. This is a land where the earth is sacred, where rivers are seen as spiritual beings, and where the thick forests hold secrets whispered across generations. For centuries, the Igbo people have thrived here, building complex societies, maintaining sacred traditions, and preserving an identity that is at once communal and deeply spiritual. The Igbo language, a member of the Niger-Congo language family, is as diverse as the people who speak it. With numerous dialects, each a linguistic testament to the region's rich cultural tapestry, Igbo is not just a means of communication. It is a vessel of ancestral wisdom. Proverbs, songs, chants, and storytelling form the backbone of Igbo oral tradition, a system of knowledge that has preserved history, philosophy, and spirituality long before the advent of written records. Language is more than a tool for the Igbo. It is a living archive, a bridge between generations, and a sacred thread that binds the past to the present. At the heart of Igbo spirituality is a profound reverence for the divine, manifesting in a belief system that centers around Chukwu, the supreme deity who is seen as the creator of all things. Chukwu is both transcendent and immanent, existing beyond the visible world yet present within it, guiding the universe with silent authority. But Chukwu does not act alone. Beneath him are a pantheon of lesser deities who govern the natural and spiritual realms. Most significant among them is Ala, the Earth Mother, who embodies the land itself, governing fertility, morality, and ancestral law. Through Ala, the Igbo people understand that the earth is sacred, that life is a gift, and that death is not an end, but a return to the ancestral womb. Socially, the Igbo are organized into a system that is both democratic and hierarchical. Clans and lineages form the basic units of society, each tracing its heritage through common ancestors. Villages are governed by councils of elders, wise men whose authority is earned through experience and moral integrity. These councils resolve disputes, maintain customs, and ensure that the sacred laws of the community are upheld. Age grades, peer groups defined by shared stages of life, also play a crucial role in maintaining social order, performing community service, organizing festivals, and initiating members into adulthood. This system of governance is a reflection of the Igbo's communal ethos, an understanding that each person is part of a greater whole, that harmony depends on respect for both elders and peers. Economic and social life in Igbo communities is centered around the market, which is not just a place of trade, but a spiritual and social hub. Each market is named after one of the 4 sacred days of the Igbo week, Eke, Ori, Afo, and Nkwo, and each is considered a sacred space where the spirit of Allah is present. Beyond commerce, markets serve as gathering places for storytelling, dance, political debate, and cultural exchange. They are living expressions of the Igbo's vibrant communal life, a place where tradition and innovation meet. But perhaps the most defining aspect of Igbo culture is its deep sense of ancestral reverence. The Igbo do not merely remember their ancestors, they live in active relationship with them. Ancestral shrines are maintained in family compounds, where libations are poured and prayers are offered. Family names often carry the memory of ancestors, and it is believed that the spirits of the departed continue to watch over the living, guiding them, blessing them, and even reincarnating within their descendants. This spiritual continuity is not a vague belief, it is a living reality that shapes everything from naming ceremonies to funeral rites. This strong sense of spirituality and identity is what makes the Igbo unique. It is also what makes the theory of a Jewish connection so powerful and so divisive. For a people who have always viewed themselves as part of a sacred lineage, the idea of an ancient connection to Israel is not just a historical question. It is a question of spiritual identity, of belonging to a divine heritage that transcends geography. But whether or not the Igbo are truly linked to ancient Jews, one thing is certain. They are a people with a profound history, a resilient culture, and a spiritual legacy that has withstood the tests of time. Understanding the Igbo means seeing beyond the theories and recognizing a civilization that has always known who it is. A people rooted in the sacred land of southeastern Nigeria, bound together by faith, family, and the silent wisdom of their ancestors. The theory that the Igbo people of Nigeria are descendants of ancient Jews is not merely a product of modern speculation. It is a narrative with roots that reach back to the era of European exploration and Christian missionary activity in West Africa. It was during this period, beginning in the 18th and 19th centuries, that European travelers, Christian missionaries, and colonial administrators first encountered the Igbo people and their customs. For these European observers, whose worldview was deeply shaped by the Bible and the stories of ancient Israel, certain aspects of Igbo culture seemed strangely familiar. They saw practices that, to their minds, mirrored the customs of ancient Jews: circumcision, dietary restrictions, ritual sacrifices, and reverence for a single supreme god known as Chukwu. The similarities were so striking to these missionaries that some of them declared the Igbo to be one of the lost tribes of Israel. The theory of the lost tribes itself is an ancient one. According to the Bible, the kingdom of Israel was divided into 2 after the reign of King Solomon: Israel in the north and Judah in the south. In 722 BCE, the northern kingdom of Israel was conquered by the Assyrian Empire, and its 10 tribes were scattered, lost to history. For centuries, explorers, scholars, and religious leaders have speculated about the fate of these lost tribes. The idea that they might have wandered into Africa and settled among the Igbo was an irresistible narrative for European missionaries who were eager to make sense of the new cultures they encountered through the lens of their own religious beliefs. But the idea of a Jewish origin for the Igbo was not only imposed from the outside. Within Igbo oral traditions, there are ancient stories of migration, tales of ancestors who came from distant lands, crossing rivers, settling in fertile lands, and establishing sacred kingdoms. Some of these stories speak of migration from the east, a direction that aligns with the Middle East. Over time, these tales became intertwined with the theory of a Jewish origin, reinforced by Christian missionaries who actively promoted the idea. For some Igbo communities, the notion of being descended from the ancient Israelites became a source of pride, a connection to a grand narrative of divine heritage. This theory gained further traction in the 20th century, as more scholars and community leaders began to explore the cultural similarities between the Igbo and the ancient Jews. They pointed to circumcision, which is practiced among the Igbo and is also a central rite in Judaism. They noted the Igbo's observance of certain dietary restrictions, including the avoidance of certain animals, which mirrored the kosher laws of the Old Testament. There were also ritual practices, such as the purification of women after childbirth, the use of altars for animal sacrifices, and the observance of a day of rest, which some saw as a parallel to the Jewish Sabbath. In the eyes of those who embraced the theory, these were not coincidences, they were evidence. Prominent figures have supported this theory over the years. Rabbi Goren of Israel, during a visit to Nigeria in the 1990s, was struck by the Igbo's customs and declared them to be of Jewish heritage. Remi Alona, an Igbo lawyer and researcher, has written extensively on the subject, arguing for a historical and cultural connection between the Igbo and the ancient Hebrews. The theory has also been supported by some members of the Jewish community in Israel and the United States, who see in the Igbo's faith and customs a reflection of ancient Jewish practice. However, this theory is not without its critics. For many historians, anthropologists, and even some Igbo traditionalists, the idea of a Jewish origin for the Igbo is seen as a form of colonial myth-making, a narrative that was imposed on the Igbo by European missionaries who misunderstood or oversimplified their culture. These critics argue that the similarities between Igbo customs and Jewish practices can be explained by the universal nature of religious rituals and moral codes. Circumcision, for instance, is practiced by many African cultures and is not unique to the Jews. The concept of a single supreme god, such as Chukwu, is also found in many African spiritual traditions, including among the Yoruba, the Akan, and the Zulu. To these critics, the Jewish theory is a story of cultural appropriation, an attempt to explain African civilization through a foreign lens. Some scholars also point out that the theory reflects a deeper problem: the tendency of European colonizers to view African cultures as incomplete or pagan unless they could be linked to a biblical or Western origin. In this view, the theory of the Igbo as a lost tribe of Israel is less about discovering their true origins and more about validating them in the eyes of the colonizers. But even within Igbo communities, the theory remains divisive. For some, it is a source of pride, a connection to a grand historical and spiritual narrative. For others, it is a distraction, a story that undermines the indigenous heritage of the Igbo by framing their history as a mere offshoot of a foreign culture. Modern Igbo Jewish communities have emerged in Nigeria, with synagogues, Hebrew prayers, and the observance of Jewish festivals. Yet traditionalists maintain the ancient beliefs of Chukwu, Allah, and the veneration of ancestors, rejecting any foreign labels. The theory of the Igbo as a Jewish people is, at its core, a story about the search for identity, an identity shaped by colonial encounters, missionary influences, and the resilience of indigenous beliefs. But to truly understand the origins of the Igbo people, one must look beyond this theory, beyond the myth of the lost tribes, to the full spectrum of their history, culture, and ancestral memory. This journey requires us to balance tradition and evidence, faith and scholarship, story and history. And that is where our exploration continues. To truly explore the question of whether the Igbo people of Nigeria are connected to ancient Jews, we must carefully examine the evidence, looking beyond stories and theories to the actual practices, language, and even the genetics of the Igbo people. This investigation begins with religious practices, where some of the strongest arguments for a Jewish connection are found. One of the most frequently cited customs is the practice of circumcision, which among the Igbo is traditionally performed on the 8th day of a male child's life. This practice closely mirrors the Jewish rite of Brit Milah, also performed on the 8th day as a covenant with God. For those who believe in a Jewish origin for the Igbo, this similarity is not a coincidence. It is a sacred link to ancient Israel. But circumcision is not the only religious practice that raises questions. The Igbo also revere a single, supreme deity known as Chukwu, who is seen as the creator of all things, an echo of the monotheism central to Judaism. While Chukwu is accompanied by a pantheon of lesser spirits and deities, he is regarded as the highest and most powerful force, much like the Jewish concept of Yahweh, the one God above all. In addition, the Igbo observe sacred festivals that some have compared to Jewish holy days. The New Yam festival, Nri, which marks the beginning of the harvest season, has been likened to the Jewish feast of Sukkot, a festival of harvest and thanksgiving. These resemblances, however, are not always as clear-cut as they seem, and critics argue that agricultural festivals are a universal human tradition, found in nearly every culture. Language is another area where connections have been drawn. Some scholars have pointed to similarities between Hebrew and Igbo words, arguing that these linguistic echoes may point to an ancient connection. For example, the Hebrew word shalom, meaning peace, is similar to the Igbo word salam, or shalom, in certain dialects. Another example is the Hebrew ivri, Hebrew, and the Igbo ibe, meaning kin or tribe. Yet language is a complex and fluid phenomenon, shaped by centuries of migration, trade, and cultural exchange. Linguists caution that similarities between words can occur by chance or through borrowing over time. They argue that without a clear, documented historical link, such linguistic parallels are suggestive at best, not definitive proof of a Jewish connection. Ritual practices also offer a fascinating area of comparison. The Igbo, like the ancient Israelites, have a tradition of animal sacrifices. Goats, chickens, and cows are offered at sacred shrines, often accompanied by prayers and chants. Blood, considered a powerful spiritual substance, is sometimes sprinkled on altars, a practice that has been compared to the ancient Jewish rituals of the Temple in Jerusalem. There are also purification rites, where individuals who are considered spiritually unclean are required to undergo cleansing before they can rejoin the community. Such rituals may involve washing in rivers, anointing with sacred oils, or offering gifts to the earth goddess Allah. To those who support the Jewish theory, these practices are echoes of the Jewish purity laws found in the Torah. But to critics, these are simply manifestations of a broader African religious heritage, where sacrifice, purification, and the veneration of sacred forces are widespread. In recent decades, the question of Igbo origins has been further complicated by the rise of genetic studies. With the advent of DNA testing, researchers have attempted to trace the ancestry of the Igbo people, hoping to find genetic evidence of a Middle Eastern connection. Some studies have suggested that a small percentage of Igbo individuals possess genetic markers associated with Semitic populations, but these results are far from conclusive. Other studies have found that the Igbo share more genetic similarities with neighboring West African populations, such as the Yoruba, Bantu, and other Niger-Congo-speaking peoples. Geneticists caution that human populations are incredibly diverse and that genetic markers alone cannot definitively prove a historical connection. DNA can tell us about the migration of genes, but it cannot always explain the migration of cultures, beliefs, or languages. A critical analysis of all this evidence reveals a complex picture. The similarities in religious practices may reflect ancient cultural exchanges between West Africa and the Middle East, rather than direct descent from the Israelites. The linguistic parallels may be coincidental or the result of long-forgotten trade contacts, rather than proof of a common ancestry. The ritual practices, sacrifices, purification, sacred festivals, are not unique to Judaism or the Igbo, but are found across many indigenous African religions. And the genetic studies, while intriguing, remain inconclusive. What becomes clear is that the theory of a Jewish origin for the Igbo is built on a combination of cultural observation, linguistic speculation, religious parallels, and a desire for a grand narrative. For those who believe in this connection, the evidence is a source of pride, a validation of identity, and a link to a sacred history. But for those who approach the theory critically, it is a story shaped by colonial encounters, missionary interpretations, and the human tendency to see patterns where none may exist. Ultimately, the question of whether the Igbo are truly connected to the ancient Jews cannot be answered by circumcision alone, or by the sound of a few words, or by the sight of an altar. It requires a deeper understanding of the Igbo people themselves, their history, their spirituality, and their resilience. The evidence, while compelling in some respects, remains open to interpretation. But the search for the truth continues, and it is a search that reveals not only the complexity of Igbo heritage, but also the power of cultural memory, the allure of ancient origins, and the enduring mystery of who we are and where we come from. While the theory of a Jewish origin for the Igbo people has captured the imagination of many, it is far from the only story of their beginnings. Beneath this controversial theory lies a far older and richer narrative of African origins, a story deeply rooted in the ancient history of West Africa. To truly understand where the Igbo come from, we must begin with the great migrations that shaped the African continent, particularly the Bantu migrations, a series of population movements that began around 3000 BCE and spread Niger-Congo-speaking peoples across Central, East, and Southern Africa. Some scholars believe that the ancestors of the Igbo were part of this vast migratory wave, settling in the fertile lands of southeastern Nigeria and developing unique cultural and linguistic identities over centuries. One of the earliest and most significant civilizations in this region was the Nok culture, which flourished between 1000 BCE and 300 CE in what is now central Nigeria. The Nok are renowned for their distinctive terracotta sculptures, intricately crafted figures with expressive faces, elaborate hairstyles, and striking artistic detail. Archaeologists have uncovered hundreds of these sculptures, along with evidence of advanced iron smelting, indicating that the Nok were among the earliest ironworking societies in sub-Saharan Africa. Some historians suggest that the Igbo people may have inherited aspects of their cultural heritage from the Nok, or that they are descended from related peoples who migrated southward as the Nok civilization declined. The art, metallurgy, and agricultural techniques of the Igbo bear the marks of this ancient legacy, even as they developed their own distinct identity. At the heart of traditional Igbo history is the kingdom of Nri, an ancient spiritual and political center that served as the cradle of Igbo civilization. Founded around the 10th century CE, Nri was not a kingdom of warriors or empire builders. It was a theocratic state ruled by sacred kings known as Eze Nri, who were regarded as divine priests, mediators between the spiritual world and the human realm. The Eze Nri were not conquerors, they were peacemakers, traveling to neighboring Igbo communities to settle disputes, purify the land, and enforce moral laws. The influence of Nri extended far beyond its immediate borders, creating a spiritual network that united the Igbo through shared beliefs, rituals, and taboos. Nri is also the source of many Igbo oral traditions, which tell stories of migration, divine guidance, and the founding of sacred towns. According to one tradition, the ancestors of the Igbo emerged from a place called Aguleri, guided by spiritual forces to establish the first settlements in the region. Another version speaks of Arochukwu, a powerful religious and mercantile center governed by a priestly class known as the Aro. The Aro developed a network of trade routes that stretched across West Africa, and their influence on Igbo society was profound, both economically and spiritually. There is also the story of the Igala connection, which suggests that the Igbo may have ancestral ties to the neighboring Igala people, who also inhabit central Nigeria. These oral traditions passed down through generations provide a mosaic of possible origins, each one reflecting the Igbo's diverse history and spiritual heritage. The Igbo did not develop in isolation. They were part of a broader network of West African civilizations that included the Benin Empire to the west, the Igala Kingdom to the north, and the various cross-river peoples to the east. The Benin Empire, with its sophisticated bronze artwork, powerful kings, obas, and expansive trade networks, exerted cultural and political influence on the Western Igbo. The Igala Kingdom, whose rulers also claimed divine authority, may have shared spiritual and political traditions with the Igbo through trade and intermarriage. To the east, the Cross River peoples, including the Ekoi and Efik, shared artistic, religious, and linguistic connections with their Igbo neighbors. This complex web of cultural exchange reveals that the Igbo were not an isolated tribe, but a people who engaged with, learned from, and influenced the civilizations around them. Perhaps the most compelling evidence of Igbo antiquity is found in the archaeological record. In addition to the terracotta art of the Nok, archaeologists have uncovered ancient settlements in Igboland that reveal a history of sophisticated urban planning, iron smelting, and long-distance trade. At Igbo-Ukwu, an ancient site dated to the 9th century CE, they discovered a royal burial filled with intricate bronze sculptures, glass beads, and ceremonial objects, artifacts that reflect a high level of craftsmanship and an extensive trade network connecting the Igbo to North Africa, the Sahara, and even the Mediterranean world. The bronze works of Igbo-Ukwu are among the most advanced in Africa, rivaling the famous bronzes of Benin. Ironworking is another key part of Igbo history. The Igbo have a long tradition of blacksmithing, and their ironworking skills were highly respected across West Africa. This expertise in metallurgy may be a legacy of the Nok culture, whose iron smelting technology predated the rise of most West African kingdoms. The Igbo's ability to produce weapons, tools, and sacred ritual objects from iron was not just a matter of technology, it was a spiritual craft, tied to their belief in divine creation and transformation. These African origins reveal a story of the Igbo that is no less remarkable than the theory of a Jewish connection. It is a story of ancient migrations, sacred kingdoms, and cultural exchange. It is a story of a people who developed complex spiritual beliefs, artistic traditions, and political systems long before European contact. This is not a tale of a lost tribe wandering from the Middle East. It is the story of a people rooted in the soil of Africa, shaped by the land, guided by their ancestors, and connected to a broader West African world. It is a history that is both indigenous and interconnected, African and global. And it is this history that gives the Igbo people their unique identity. A people with a deep spiritual heritage, a resilient culture, and a history that cannot be reduced to a single narrative. The question of whether the Igbo people are descended from ancient Jews is not just a matter of history. It is a question of identity. And identity is a deeply personal, often emotional issue. For some Igbo people, the theory of a Jewish connection is a source of cultural pride, a link to a grand spiritual lineage that stretches back to the ancient world. It is a narrative that offers a sense of divine chosenness, the connection to a global religious family, and a place within the sacred history of the Abrahamic faiths. This sense of pride is not merely theoretical. It is tangible, expressed through religious practices, family traditions, and the establishment of modern Igbo-Jewish communities in Nigeria. In places like Abuja, Lagos, and Nui, there are synagogues where Igbo Jews gather to observe the Sabbath, celebrate Passover, and recite prayers in Hebrew. For these communities, being Igbo and being Jewish are not contradictory. They are two aspects of a single, sacred identity. But the embrace of this theory has not been without controversy. For other Igbo, the idea of a Jewish origin is seen as a distraction from their true heritage, a narrative imposed by foreign missionaries and colonial observers who misunderstood Igbo culture. To them, the focus on a Jewish connection is a form of cultural erasure, a way of framing Igbo history as an offshoot of another people's story, rather than as a unique civilization in its own right. These critics argue that the Igbo are not a lost tribe of Israel. They are an ancient African people with their own indigenous spirituality, their own sacred traditions, and their own history of kings, priests, and philosophers. For them, the insistence on a Jewish connection is a distortion, a story that overshadows the true depth of Igbo heritage. Balancing these two perspectives requires a delicate approach, one that respects the right of individuals to identify as they choose, while also maintaining a commitment to historical accuracy. Oral traditions are a vital part of Igbo culture, carrying the spiritual memory of the people across generations. These stories should be honored, but they should also be examined critically, recognizing that oral history is a blend of fact, myth, and cultural memory. A responsible approach to Igbo identity means exploring all aspects of their heritage, both the Jewish theory and the African origins, without dismissing one in favor of the other. It means asking questions, seeking evidence, and embracing complexity, rather than simple narratives. One of the most significant aspects of this debate has been the emergence of modern Igbo-Jewish communities. Since the 20th century, some Igbo people who believe in their Jewish heritage have established synagogues, studied Hebrew, and adopted Jewish religious practices. These communities are small but passionate, maintaining their faith despite skepticism from both Nigerian traditionalists and mainstream Jewish authorities. In Israel, the question of whether Igbo Jews should be recognized as part of the global Jewish family is a topic of ongoing debate. Some rabbis have expressed support for their recognition, while others remain cautious, insisting on genealogical proof or formal conversion. But as this debate continues, it is important to avoid misconceptions and distortions. The Igbo are not lost or discovered people. They are a proud and ancient civilization with a history that predates the arrival of missionaries and the rise of the Jewish theory. They are not defined solely by a possible connection to Israel. They are defined by their own unique spiritual beliefs, their reverence for Chukwu and Allah, their sacred kingship of Nri, and their rich cultural heritage. In the end, the question of Igbo identity is not just about where they come from, it is about who they choose to be. Whether they see themselves as part of the Jewish story, the African story, or a blend of both, their heritage is a testament to the resilience of memory, the power of faith, and the enduring mystery of human origins. To explore Igbo identity is to navigate a landscape where history and myth intertwine, where belief and evidence coexist, and where the search for truth is as much a spiritual journey as it is a historical one. The debate over whether the Igbo people of Nigeria are descendants of ancient Jews is not just an academic argument. It is a conversation about cultural identity, a reflection of how the Igbo see themselves and how they are seen by the world. For many Igbo, the theory of a Jewish connection has become a source of pride, a story that connects them to a sacred lineage and a global spiritual family. It has inspired the formation of Igbo Jewish communities, where prayers are recited in Hebrew, Sabbath candles are lit, and ancient rituals are observed. For those who embrace this narrative, it is a way of affirming a sense of chosenness, a way of saying that their history is part of something much larger. But the impact of this debate goes beyond Nigeria. In the global Igbo diaspora, where questions of identity and belonging are often complex, the theory of a Jewish origin has served as a bridge, connecting Igbo communities in the United States, the United Kingdom, Israel, and beyond. It has created a shared sense of purpose, a way for Igbo people to maintain their cultural heritage in the face of assimilation. For some, it has also become a means of navigating racial and religious identity in societies where African traditions are often marginalized or misunderstood. Yet, embracing this theory without understanding its full context can also be dangerous. It risks reducing the rich, diverse history of the Igbo to a single narrative, overshadowing their indigenous heritage, their ancient kingdoms, their spiritual beliefs, and their resilience as an African people. The Igbo are not defined solely by a possible connection to ancient Israel. They are defined by a heritage that is at once indigenous and global, rooted in the sacred land of southeastern Nigeria, but also shaped by centuries of cultural exchange. This debate matters because it challenges us to embrace complexity, to recognize that identity is not always a simple story of origin, but a tapestry woven from many threads. It invites us to honor the past while respecting the present, and to see the Igbo people not just as a lost tribe, but as a living civilization with a history worth exploring in all its depth. The story of the Igbo people is not just a question of ancient migrations or lost tribes. It is a living testament to the power of identity, faith, and resilience. Whether the Igbo are connected to ancient Jews, descended from the sacred kings of Nri, or shaped by the wisdom of the Nok civilization, their heritage is vast, complex, and beautiful. Exploring these origins should not be a journey of division, but a path to understanding, a way of honoring the past without losing the present, a way of embracing cultural pride without rejecting historical truth. The Igbo are a people of stories, and those stories, both sacred and historical, are worth celebrating. As you have joined this journey of discovery, I speak a blessing over you. May the light of wisdom guide your thoughts. May the truth of your heritage shine brightly, and may the peace of the Creator dwell within you. May you walk in understanding, rooted in who you are, and open to who you can become. May your history be a source of strength, your faith a source of comfort, and your identity a source of pride. If this journey has opened your heart or sparked your curiosity, I invite you to like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to my channel. Join this family of truth seekers and storytellers. Because your story, like the story of the Igbo, is sacred.